Hello, 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 and happy Thursday. I hope you all are having a wonderful holiday season. Let's get started. Chapter 26. The Further Rustification of Adam S. Adam dug post holes in the prairie grass, and with the long, slender logs he had cut, he constructed a fence that enclosed a rectangular corral roughly 20 by 50 meters. The entrance to the brook path was centered in the long side that bordered the forest. The 3 mini llama trails leading across the prairie to the brook passed through the manual gates in the outer sides of the corral. Along the forest side at the end away from the dome he placed another row of posts to form a meter-wide exit chute from the brook, so the mini llamas could exit the forest path without getting through the corral. The fence on the forest side of the chute kept the beast from creating an easy, short bypass to the old path. At the entrance to the brook path he placed 2 gates, one automatic, the other manual. The automatic gate connected the brook path to the exit chute and acted like a check valve, allowing beasts to exit the brook path but preventing loose beasts from the prairie from coming through the chute to the brook. The gate was actuated by breaking a light beam across the brook path that activated a microfusion motor, driving the gate so it opened into the chute, forcing back any mini llamas waiting in the chute outside, while letting out the beast leaving the brook. The other gate closed off the exit from the narrow shearing chute that was formed along the woodside fence opposite the exit chute by a short parallel fence with a manual entrance gate. Another short length of fence angled into the corral from the chute at 45 degrees to form an entrance funnel. He turned on the lamp and the photodetector that would activate the motor on the check valve gate, closed the gates at both ends of the shearing chute, loaded all his tools and leftover supplies into the cargo robot, and directed it, in turn, to each of the 3 outside entrance gates, which he opened. He wound up parking the cargo robot outside the entrance gate nearest the dome. He was ready for business. The thirst of the mini llamas should draw the beast into the corral. There was nothing to do but wait. He let down the cargo ramp and sat down, then lay back supine so he could watch the Ceremonians circling in the blue sky far overhead. He remembered then that the last flight he had taken to talk to Sanapo, when he had found Sarko instead. During none of his flights, neither on this planet or earlier on the Wolf Planet, had he considered the experience of flying itself. At the time his mind was far too busy with other disturbing thoughts. Now that he looked back to those flights and realized that the act of flying had been an exceedingly enjoyable experience. Watching the Ceremonians far above, he relived those moments, recapturing the pleasure he had subconsciously stored away without really savoring it and appreciating it at the time. Until it got quite close, he failed to notice the large Ceremonian shape coming directly at him on the long glide path from the direction of the Cliff of Times. Its dull silver color bleached into the grayish-blue sky, and because of its lack of motion, bearing, and elevation, the beast was almost invisible and was nearly upon him. Then it came at him in a rush, flared its wings, lost momentum and stalled, but did so almost 2 meters too high, so that it fell to the ground only a couple of meters away with a decided impact, wings outspread. The momentum of its low center of gravity had swung its body forward, and pivoted around its shoulders so it fell flat on its back. Adam couldn't help but recall his similar experience in testing the Ceremonian wings for the first time, when he had glided from the lorry, dragging his toes and fallen on his face. From the size and color, he knew at once it was Eve. He had risen to a sitting position when he had detected the moving object. Now, while Adam watched quietly, Eve transformed back to the aerial imprint, lying on the ground as though the robot didn't want to risk the awkward indignity of trying to stand while still imprinted on the Ceremonian. With the metamorphosis complete, she stood quickly and with a delicacy and grace that contrasted sharply for harsh words. "You misled me, Adam Silverside." "How so?" Adam asked. "Ariel is not human, neither is Derek. You knew, yet you didn't tell me that Neuronius is the only human here. He is my master. You and Mandelbrot and the Avery robots are aliens to me. Your laws are obviously not my laws. Something compels you to serve non-humans in spite of Neuronius and the wisdom he tried to pass on to you." She talked so fast Adam didn't get a chance to interrupt, and then she wheeled abruptly and ran rapidly in the direction of the dome. Although disturbed, she didn't seem violently so. She didn't seem dangerous, even though she had clearly responded to the insidious persuasion of Neronius. Adam would have liked to have had a better chance to counter that poison. Still, Ariel could probably do a better job than he, and with more authority. After all, it was Ariel who had pushed Eve in the direction of Neronius in the first place, albeit unwittingly. Adam sat there, watching her progress towards the dome, waiting patiently for his experiment to reach its climax, when the mini llamas would start entering his corral. It was some time later, after he resumed his supine position and his observation of the soaring Sirmians, that he heard the muffled explosion. He rose up just as a flaming, cartwheeling object landed in the grass midway between him and the activity near the dome where the explosion had taken place. He jumped up, raised and secured the ramp, and directed the cargo robot to the location where the object had landed. Chapter 27 Neronius Strikes Out. When Eve Silverside found her, Ariel was sitting at the computer terminal in the apartment, examining Woolruff's latest report on the final steps needed to put the last of the robot farms in operation. "I have carried out your wishes, Ariel," Eve said. The missing title, the lack of polite address, caught Ariel's attention and alerted her to the possible trouble ahead. She turned around to face Eve. Eve continued. "I talked to Adam, but he was quite uncooperative. No help at all." "You did what I asked," Ariel said. "I was hoping you would succeed where Derek and I failed, but actually I had some small hope that you could get anything out of him. Not when he pleaded third law considerations. Don't feel too bad." "But I did succeed. I found out what Master Neronius told him. All the things they talked about." "I don't understand." "I talked to Master Neronius himself." "Neronius?" Ariel began to feel apprehensive, sensing impending calamity. Feeling very much alone. Mandelbrot was with Derek. She had sent Jacob to the locker in the basement for a fresh box of postronic data storage cubes. Personal robots were never around when you really needed them. "Yes, Master Neronius," Eve replied. "He tried to teach Adam the science behind the compensator domes, but failed. He will succeed with me, though." "Ah, then he hasn't taught you yet?" "No, not yet, but I will learn when he teaches you." "Me?" "Yes, I will by listening to your conversation." Ariel seriously considered the idea briefly, but only for a moment. Talk about upstaging Derek. That would put her hyperwave modulation Q in the deep shade. But she would not likely understand the technology, even if she had the opportunity. She hadn't understood even the idea when Sinapo and Sarko had tried to summarize the dome construction for Derek. And to get involved with Neronius after Sinapo's warning would be sheer idiocy. "Not likely," Ariel said. "And you should stay away from Neronius. He is exceedingly dangerous." "You must come with me now, Ariel. Master Neronius is waiting in the forest." "Don't be silly. I have no intention of going with you, nor of meeting with an insane Ceremian." "Why do you say damaging things like that? Master Neronius does not deprecate you in that fashion. Instead, he has a great deal of faith in you. Otherwise, he wouldn't be willing to help you in your struggle with Sinapo." "I'm not struggling with Sinapo. He and I get along fine." "But he has deluded you." "No, quite the contrary. Neronius has deluded you, just like he confused and tried to take over Adam. Fortunately, Adam had talked to Sinapo first and then Sarko later. Together they were able to straighten him out. It's unfortunate that Adam wouldn't talk to you. We could have avoided all this if he had. It would be better still if I hadn't sent you to Adam in the first place, but now it seems I had good reason to." "It is Adam who is still confused. He knows that Master Neronius is the only human on the planet." "What?" Ariel wasn't sure she had heard that right. "Adam knows that Master Neronius is the only human here." "Adam told you that?" "No, but he didn't deny it just now." "Who did tell you then? Surely not even Neronius is that irrational." "That is the most important thing I learned from Master Neronius, and Adam confirmed it by his silence. Adam's laws cannot be my laws, or he too would recognize and obey our master." "Surely you don't believe that?" Ariel wished desperately that Jacob would get back up for the storage cubes. She couldn't stall much longer. "You must come with me now," Eve insisted. "No, we must talk to Adam. He can clear all this up. We'll go talk to Adam just as soon as Jacob returns. In the meantime, go stand in your niche, Eve. I have to get back to work." Ariel turned back to the terminal, feigning an aurora and confidence in dealing with robots that she no longer felt. Eve gathered her up in one quick swoop, handling her like a disobedient child with none of the gentleness Adam had used when he had taken her to witness Eve's birth. That experience came immediately to mind. Twice now these wild robots had subjected her person to gross indignities. They were going out by the street door as Jacob started up the stairs from the basement to the small lobby. He heard Ariel scream for help as his foot hit the first step. "Jacob!" It came with that trailing Doppler effect. He took the rest of the steps 3 at a time, but he was slower than Eve, and though he trailed her all the way down Main Street, he could not overtake her. She gradually pulled away from him. Wooler 9, a block away and walking down Main Street in the course of his official duties, also witnessed the abduction. The first flow overrode those duties, so he, too, took up the chase. Although he was faster than Jacob, the distance between them was too great, and he never caught up. Jacob put out an alarm on the comlink, but the robots on the street could do little to stop Eve of her burden, because that would endanger Ariel. She was completely under the control of a wild thing who, quite likely, might not recognize their laws of robotics. Jacob and Mandelbrot had planted that seed of doubt in the Avery robots, and now it was working against them. By the time Jacob emerged from the opening in the dome, Eve was disappearing around the curve of the structure with Ariel still cradled in her arms. Jacob didn't slow. If anything, he sped up, pounding down the trail of crushed grass left by Eve. When he had them in sight again, they were heading directly towards the forest. He was still 100 meters away when they reached the cover of the trees and were lost to sight in the shrubbery. Then he was engulfed in the dark shadow of Oyster World's dominant species landed in front of him, wings outspread and blocking his path to the forest. "Silverside, you must not interfere!" the alien said. "Out of my way!" Jacob shouted, not slowing or changing course, or correcting the alien's mistaken notion of who he was. The alien quickly withdrew its right wing just before Jacob would have run into it. It flapped into the air, overtook him, and as it passed over him he heard it shout again, "You are making a great mistake, serving the wrong master!" Again it landed in front of him, this time near the edge of the forest, but in its haste to break, stall, and touch down in front of him, the alien misjudged, not allowing enough time to retreat in case he didn't stop. This time Jacob tried to avoid the wing, but the timing and his momentum didn't allow it. He ran into the wing, spinning the alien around and entangling himself in the thin but tough membrane. He could feel the wing bones cracking, and he heard the grunt of the alien ejecting gases as their bodies came together. Then a hot flame burned his eyes and his hair and his skin. He was blind when the last stimuli recorded came to his ears and face. The muffled whoosh and the violent pressure of exploding hydrogen as his flailing arms crushed the alien's high-pressure gas storage cells. Jacob Winterson was essentially demolished, except for the lower torso and thighs that remained in one piece. Cartwheeling through the air, trailing remnants of burning clothing and synthetic skin, before landing in the grass a half-kilometer away, not far from the forest. Neronius was even more finely divided. Chapter 28. A Sad Ritual. Derek and Ariel met at the apartment after the explosion. Using Derek's internal monitor, Wooler 9 had informed him of the accident immediately after it occurred. Ariel had witnessed the spectacle from the shelter of the trees, and had broken away from Eve and run out to where grass and dirt had been torn away by the explosion to form a shallow, bare depression in the ground, so she didn't see Adam retrieve what little was left of Jacob Winterson. He covered Jacob's remains with coils of rope before he picked up Ariel and Wooler 9 in the cargo robot. Eve had disappeared. Ariel sat down on the pile of rope and rode that way to the apartment, not knowing she was sitting on what was left of Jacob. She went directly up to the apartment while Wooler 9 stood in the cargo robot, explaining to Adam what had happened, as much as he knew. Adam had not seen what had led up to the explosion. Derek and Mandelbrot arrived while Adam was removing Jacob's remains from beneath the large pile of rope. Buller 9 took the cargo robot to dispose of the remains. Derek and Adam stood on the sidewalk in front of the apartment while Adam took a quarter-hour to explain to Derek in detail what had happened and what had led up to it, including Eve's state of mind before and after she had talked to Neronius. Then they went up to the apartment, and Derek told Ariel while Buller 9 had gone. "I didn't know there was anything left," Ariel said. "I'm sorry, Ariel, but there's not much," Derek said. "Where did Buller take him?" Ariel felt a very strong loyalty and determination at that moment. "The disassembly station," Derek said. "The recoverable parts area at the robot factory?" "Yes. They're already picking him to pieces? But to stick little bits of him in some other robot?" "Not likely. I doubt if he's plug compatible." "They'll melt him down?" Her voice rose an octave. "Mandelbrot, get hold of Buller 9 immediately. Tell him to stop them, now!" The last came out stridently, almost incoherent. "Buller 9 is probably already on his way back," Derek said. "Notify them at the factory, Mandelbrot." Mandelbrot, standing rigidly in his storage niche, shuddered slightly, eyes quickening. After a few seconds he said, "They have not yet disposed of the remains, and will now do nothing until they are told otherwise." "I've got to get over there," Ariel said. "I'll take you if you must go," Derek said. "No, Derek. Mandelbrot knows where it is. I don't want to make a big thing out of this. I just want to pay my respects. Sounds silly, doesn't it? Paying your respects to pieces of a robot?" "I guess not, if you feel it's that important." "Would you like me to come along, Miss Ariel?" Adam Silverside was standing near the door. That was the first time since his transformation that she had got a Miss Ariel response. When he had come out of the bedroom that night she had been demoted to plain Ariel. "No, Adam, you best stay here with Derek and Woolruff." Woolruff was sitting on the couch, listening and taking it all in, but not participating in what was not a very joyous moment in the mutual relations of the group. When Ariel got to the factory, she put what was left of Jacob in a gray steel spare parts box. It was the only time she smiled that evening. A gentle smile, pensive, brought on by the irony she felt. Adam Silverside's imagination had not equaled the reality of Jacob Winterson. It was a good thing she had not explored further. She might not now be so content with Derek, at least in that one respect. She and Mandelbrot buried Jacob Winterson in the ground at the west pedestrian exit from the new transportation terminal, near where she had stood in her meetings with the aliens. The funeral service was simple. Just a few thoughts as she stood there while Mandelbrot lightly tamped the loose soil over Jacob's coffin with the small shovel he had fastened from his robotic arm. At that moment her recollection of Jacob's sensitivity came back and overwhelmed her. She was remembering his discerning contribution during that first meeting. They had been at a complete impasse in their negotiations. At that critical point Jacob had suggested that she inquire concerning the effectiveness of the dome as a weather node compensator in its present state of completion. When she thought about it now, that knowledge seemed crucial to the final resolution of the dilemma she had been able to achieve in her negotiations with the aliens. She was really going to miss Jacob. Now she would never know what he would have been like as a lover. She had not been aware that would be such a keen disappointment. She gently tapped the ground covering the small grave with the toe of her shoe and, with tears in her eyes, walked back into the terminal, followed by Mandelbrot. And thus ends this penultimate part. I hope you'll all join me again on Tuesday for the final part. Thank you, and hope you all have a good evening, and happy holidays. Bye! Oh, and a happy new year. That too.